So, in the last 20 or 30 years or so, there have been several major perceived and actual events that have changed society. We've had the big Y2K scare where everybody thought the world was going to come to an end in 2000. We had the financial crisis of 2008 where companies were going out of business, real estate was crashing, mortgage rates were going crazy. Some of the major financial institutions went out of business, the stock market crashed, unemployment. And then about 14 years later, we had the big pandemic that hit, and that changed things overnight. And in the meantime, there were smaller events that happened. You had some cultural changes, you had some logistical changes in society and in politics. But there's something coming up which might eclipse all of those. And that event could be November of 2022, or maybe December of 2022. And why is November 22 a significant potential event? Well, there's going to be a major election in November of 2022. That election is the first one of the major ruling policymaking body of the United States since the pandemic, since the cultural upheaval of the last 2 or 3 years, and since the market polarization of society that happened over the last 24 months. This is the first time we've had a major election. Yeah, we had a presidential election in 2020, but that was right at the beginning of when this was happening, and it was just one person. It was the president, which, believe it or not, may seem like the most powerful person, but they don't have all the lawmaking capability. In the legislative body, there's still a balance. Why is this going to be an issue? Well, as you know, right now, there are basically two teams, two sides of culture, society, politics in this country. Left and right, red and blue, whatever you want to call it. And there could not be more at odds with each other right now than they have been in modern history. There's really no crossover anymore. There used to be commonality. There used to be at least some middle ground. Now it's either all or nothing on either side. What's going to happen in November of 2022 is one side is going to win. One side is going to take over control and power and exert their will and their strategy for running a society on the entire society. The other side's not going to really have any say in it. It's not going to be a scenario where there'll be inclusion, there'll be input from the other side. Doesn't matter which side we're talking about. I'm just saying somebody's going to win, and it's winner take all in this case. And this will be different. You know, back in the mid 80s, we had a conservative, Republican, red, whatever you want to call it, ruling class that at least had a message of compassionate conservatism, right? They had social programs. Granted, you can still point and they were, hard right, or they'd had a lot of traditional conservative, Republican, right-leaning policies, but they at least had a message of compassionate conservative. They wanted everybody to have a place in the tent. Again, whether or not they did it enough or not, that's a different story. But at least they had the intention of doing that. Fast forward 10 years later, you had a Democratic ruling class that had some right-leaning factors. They had a lot of involvement with wars. They had some major changes in deregulation for companies. They also cut back on a lot of social programs as Democrats. So there was a crossover on both sides. So the 80s had compassionate conservatism. The 90s had warmongering and deregulation Democrats. So there was always that crossover, that yin and yang, that balance. We may not have any balance after November. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. It's going to be bad. Because even if you're on the side that takes over power, creating that conflict without any balance is going to, when you don't have balance, it creates upheaval. So it's possible that there could be some cultural consequences. There could be financial consequences. There could be events, upheavals, who knows? But I think that there's a blind spot in society that this election is the same as any other one. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. The difference is there is very little connection between the two sides that kind of kept each other in check, kept each other in balance, and that could create some significant anxiety or some significant pain and trauma for whichever side doesn't have things go their way. But even if you are on the side that things go your way, you may find that full exercise of winner take all might even change things for your own perspective that might not be as beneficial as you think. Put your comments below. Let us know what you think about what happens after November. What's going to change? Is it going to open up the floodgates for a lot of extreme thinking one way or another? And is that going to affect the day-to-day running of the culture, running of the society in a way that makes us live in a way that we never did before?